Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. First, I want to tell you some truths. That you matter, you're important, you're lovable, you're enough, and you belong here. Because shame tells us a different story. It tells us we're not enough. There's something wrong with us. We're defective. We're a bad person. We're not fill in the blank enough. Thin enough, pretty enough, handsome enough, successful enough. It's all just a sham. We're all human beings on this planet trying to feel good about ourselves, find ourselves, have healthier relationships, not only with ourselves, but with other people, be healthier parents, and be present. And today's episode will help you on that journey. If you are on a journey to become more of yourself, break free from codependency, or not knowing who you are and feeling lost. And maybe you've bought into some beliefs that no longer serve you. And you're trying to what we call individuate and separate, meaning have your own thoughts, feelings, and opinions. Get away from groupthink. Think critically on your own. This is the podcast for you, and this is the episode for you. Vanessa Bennett, my guest, is a licensed marriage and family therapist. I love interviewing other marriage and family therapists because we sort of think the same because of our training and the work we've done individually. And she definitely aligns with doing her own work and has done her own work. And you'll be able to tell when you hear her. She's an author and facilitator known for her no-nonsense yet compassionate approach to personal growth and healing. She is the co-author of the successful relationship book, It's Not Me, It's You. That title's so good because side note, anyone that comes into couples therapy thinks it's the other person. And what we do in couples therapy is really working within yourself or helping couples do that. So I like that title. And she also wrote her latest book, The Motherhood Myth, which we talk a lot about myths today, about sex, motherhood, relationships, and we're breaking up with a lot of these expectations that we were taught. She is a former New Yorker turned Los Angeles-based therapist, and we really talked about how there's life and death in this journey we're on. And she talks about she was one in the Palisades fire in California while she was writing the book. Her house caught on fire. And what a metaphor for what she's trying to teach. Like things die, people die, things within inside of us die. Parts of ourselves that we thought were authentic to us no longer are. And so we're talking about rebirths and losses and how to navigate all that and how that leads to your freedom and your healing. So be sure to grab the journal that can help you along this journey. It's free. It's at kristendboyce.com/free resources. We'll link that in the show notes and follow along. You are welcome in this community. You are celebrated for the work you're doing. It feels lonely when we do this deeper work sometimes. And I just want you to know you are so worth it and you are breaking patterns. You're breaking generational patterns. Keep going. Don't give up when it gets hard. And I hope this podcast inspires you and motivates you to continue to sit in the uncomfortable. So here is my conversation with Vanessa. Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am so grateful for my guest today because not only was she writing a book, but then her house burned down during the whole process. We were just talking before we got started. And Vanessa, welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I'm so grateful for your time and being here today.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Yeah, talk about close the chapter, right?
Well, unexpectedly, this is you didn't expect that to happen. Tell me about writing the motherhood myth in the middle of this kind of process in your, like this crisis and trauma in your own life.
Yeah. I mean, a little bit like we were saying before we got on, when you're writing a book like this, it's being alchemized and metabolized for years leading up to the actual writing, right? And then you get a deadline, which was only 6 months, which is pretty normal, I hear. So I was already kind of pushing it with the deadline, doing my best. And then, I was part of the fires in January in Los Angeles, in Altadena. And so we lost everything. Our whole community was gone. And I was right in the midst of deadlines when that happened. And so much of my book, while through the lens of motherhood, is really, I guess, bigger picture. It's more about these cycles of death and rebirth, which is essentially the archetype of life, really, archetypal pattern of life. And so you're living it while you're writing it, even though I wasn't living the motherhood part of it. I mean, obviously, I'm always living the motherhood part of it. It was living the archetype of this life-death cycle.
Yeah. I mean, and it's in your body. Now it's activated in your body again. Like, tell me about when you say motherhood myth. Okay.
Mhm.
So people are like,
Mhm.
well, what does that mean exactly?
Yep.
Let's start
Yes.
there.
The book is broken into 3 sections. So you have motherhood, sex, and relationships. And I talk about myths within each of those kind of categories, but the overarching myth, like the motherhood myth that I reference, is this idea that motherhood, and then we'll say sex and partnership or relationships, but motherhood should be inherently easy and it should be the thing that fills you up. And if those 2 things are not true for you, there's something wrong with you. And that is really the myth that we have been fed in this society. And it was something that kind of catapulted me into this revelation. Obviously I'm a therapist. And so I work with clients all the time that are steeped in shame because we know that shame is the biggest thing that keeps people stuck. And I started realizing and connecting these dots, again, through the lens of motherhood, but also through partnership, also through other relationships, about how shame is really used as a tool by the systems that be, which we can get into, to keep us stuck on purpose, functioning for kind of tap dancing for our belonging or people pleasing or wanting to be included or loved or cherished or all of these things that we're all desperately seeking. But we are not aware that there's a puppet kind of master like pulling the strings. And that was like the real revelation that I wanted to birth in this book.
I think what we internalize from such a young age is what a mother should be like.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Like, what is an ideal mother and what does that look like? And then also tangled up in this is our own mothers and how
Yes.
we were mothered. How do those 2 go hand in hand?
Yeah, I mean, I have a chapter on the mother wound and the father wound, but I like to remind people, and I do this in the book, that like there's the tangible mother wound and then there's the archetypal mother wound. And our mothers, our tangible mothers, are also wrapped up and caught up in the archetypal mother wound, right? Because they themselves were mothered and their mothers were mothered. And so we're all part of this kind of larger wound. And it's not just women, obviously, which has us again striving for comfort, belonging, being seen, being accepted, and kind of again putting our worth and our value outside of ourselves in order to try to get that need met or have that wound kind of be healed. So they work hand in hand, but they are different. Again, the best thing I can do when I talk to clients is like help somebody understand that their mother is obviously another human that also exists in the same system, was also fed the same blueprints, was also mothered under patriarchal dominator systems, and was also mothering out of fear, right? And was also just a very real, imperfect, messy human being.
It's so true. When we look at these sections of your book, we look at
Mhm.
motherhood, we look at sex, and then relationships. Okay.
Mhm.
What are the biggest myths in each category?
Yeah. So motherhood, obviously, I said kind of the big myth, but some of the other ones. So I talk about like the martyrdom archetype. And so there's a chapter called Martyrdom is Not Mothering. And so when you say like we have this idea of the perfect mother or what a mother looks like, we have been taught that to be a good, air quote, good mother is to be a martyr, is to be selfless, is to give yourself to the point of depletion and to never question it and to not be upset about it and just give with a smile on your face, right? Not really have anything of your own, no needs, no desires. Every chapter has either an archetypal feminine form or a myth or a fairy tale that I kind of use as an example, right? To continue the teaching, the thread of teaching. And in that particular chapter, I use the archetype of Mother Mary. And I talk specifically about how the Western religion took a compilation of a few different mythic feminine archetypes and also just goddesses and kind of took compilations of that in order to create Mother Mary as a being. And then slowly what you see happen is these elements of this archetype that are human and kind of inclusive of all facets of the self. So the dark side, the angry side, the side that includes death, not just rebirth, they were stripped away until we were left with this archetype that, again, was essentially used to control. It was like, do you see the perfection of this person? This is who you should be striving to be. Piety, purity, selflessness, all of these things that we all think of when we think of Mother Mary. And so that's like one example, right? Martyrdom. And then the sex section, I talk a lot about this idea, right? We all know the kind of tropes between the genders around sex and the myths that we've all been handed. For men, they get their sense of identity through sexual prowess and how attractive their partner is. And for women, it's all about pleasing the other person. Sex is not about us. Sex is in service of somebody else's ego. Sex is in service of keeping a relationship. Sex is in service of keeping safety. There's all these means to an end, if you will, but one of them is definitely not pleasure, you know? And so I break down all the different myths that are related to sex. I talk a lot about one of the chapters I think that's gotten ruffled a bit of feathers is the chapter where I talk about how in our society, sex has become kind of a release valve for men. Men who are raised under patriarchy, that's right, have been cut off from their emotional and I would say spiritual selves, right? But just because we cut it off and we shame them for it doesn't mean it goes away. And so what happens is they tend to use sex as a conduit to feel. They want to feel connected to somebody, but they also want to feel connected to themselves. They also want to feel connected to a higher power. And because they don't have the means to do that in our culture, they seek it out through sex, right? It becomes this transcendent experience. The problem with that is they're not having sex with nobody. They're having sex with a real live soul on the other side. And so many women come to me and say, they feel it. Like, this isn't about me. This isn't about me and my soul. This is about you getting something from this, right? And I can tell. And so we have to unpack that. And so that's one of the myths that I talk about in that second one. And then the third section, relationships, is really my deep dive into codependency, which is kind of like my bread and butter as far as what I do out there in the world, but really just talking about how we are a codependent society. It's how we've been raised to relate to one another. And I break down a lot of the myths around that.
How do you define codependency? Because I've done a lot of podcast episodes on it because it's so pervasive.
It's so pervasive. And I think that years ago, when I started really diving into that realm, I had come through 12 steps. I had done Al-Anon. I had come out of a relationship with a functioning alcoholic. I had realized the prevalence of it in my own family history. I'd had all the, oh my God moments. But when I really started looking at it through the lens of a therapist, I started realizing again, I'm like, oh, no, we're actually just a codependent society. It is just the way we've been taught to love. It's the way that we've been taught that love should look like, feel like, sound like, smell like. And so the kind of pithy shorthand way that I describe it to clients is, if you're good, I'm good. If you're not good, I'm not good. And really, it just becomes this like, I outsource my sense of okayness. I outsource my sense of worth, belonging to somebody outside of myself. And I also talk a lot about how we're all addicts in our own way. One person's Jack and Coke is another person's people pleasing. They're all serving the same purpose.
That's so true. You're giving me so many like, oh, I want to go this direction. I want to go that direction. What intrigued me is this sex conversation in particular, because I feel like it's under talked about because there's so much shame and fear and secrecy and hiding surrounding it.
Agreed.
So the first piece that came up for me is the clients that are like, but I don't want my husband or my partner or my fill in the blank to not be satisfied. So I have sex so many times a week. So they're not going to go outside the relationship. So we've heard that before. Yeah. So let's talk about that. What are your thoughts on that?
So within the structures of a codependent society, we are taught again that our sense of worth is found outside of ourselves. We're also raised through the lens of the choose me wound, which is, in order to be okay, I have to be chosen by somebody else. In a lot of ways, the way that we're raised in this society keeps us very emotionally immature, very emotionally stunted.
Yes.
We do not kind of transition emotionally and spiritually into sovereign adulthood because we are taught, to be honest, again, going back to the puppeteer, that's dangerous. If a society of people knows that they are inherently valuable, they are inherently good and worthy and lovable, and they don't need to look outside of themselves for that proof, then they stop being controllable. They stop buying the next best iPhone in order to be part of the cool crowd. They stop looking at the fancy car in order to prove their value to their neighbors. So capitalism in and of itself can't function. And then all of the other systems of dominance can't function because all of the systems we live within tell us that there's a one up, one down structure. And we're always trying to prove ourselves so that we can climb that ladder. And so I say all that to say, take away the shame from being, if you heard yourself and what you just said, Kristen, if you're listening and you're like, oh,
Yes.
that's me, no shame. Like, welcome to the club, right? We've all been raised this way.
Mm-hmm.
But a differentiated, mature self knows all of those things inherently and knows that I can belong to myself and choose myself, and I can exist in relationships that respect and honor that or not. And that or not does not shake your sense of self or value. That or not, you realize, has nothing to do with you, and it doesn't mean death. I think for a lot of us, again, this very immature relational way of being, we do equate it with death because it feels like abandonment all over again. And so we try our best to make sure that doesn't happen through whatever means necessary, Sarah, and a lot of it is self-abandonment.
Let's talk about differentiation because I love it. I love it. I swim in it. This is what I work with clients on because I feel like it's the key indicator. No matter what the wound is, okay, in particular, motherhood wound or relational wounds or sex wounds, talk about differentiation. What does it mean? How important is it in terms of self and relationships?
Yeah. I mean, so differentiation. So my background's in depth psychology. So I'm a Jungian trained therapist. And this process of individuation, the process of differentiation are really big elements to that type of work. It's the psychology of the soul. And so one would say that you have to look at the totality of your trajectory. And throughout your trajectory, again, you hope to individuate, you hope to go through these moments where you transition into an evolved, more mature version of yourself. In order to do that, there has to be death, spiritual, archetypal, a pattern of death, and there has to be rebirth. What happens in a culture of being terrified to let go, because we're all being kind of controlled by our abandonment wounds, we don't ever allow those deaths to happen. And usually when they happen against our will, we struggle so much that we miss the opportunity to integrate the lesson, integrate the learning, integrate this new version of ourselves that will be reborn on the other side. But it has to be born through the work. It has to be born through going through the darkness and again, integrating, right? Differentiation is part of that process, which really, as we evolve and grow up, become more mature, says, I am my own autonomous being and you are your own autonomous being. I don't own you. I don't control you, and vice versa. I can be okay even if you're not okay, and vice versa. It's not my job to save you, fix you. I can't do that because I'm not God. And so it's that process, and it starts with our childhood. So when you think about like that very natural moment of adolescence where the parents fall from grace and suddenly they become stupid and they don't know anything, a lot of parents fight against that. They feel like you're disrespecting me. And there becomes like this punishment lens on that. And so often I will tell parents of adolescents, that is such a normal process of differentiation because it's the moment where the ego goes, oh, you're a different self than me. We can believe different things and still be in relationship. We can prioritize different things and still be in relationship. But they have to do it through force many times because they're breaking out of childhood, which is hard. And so anyway, adolescence is just one moment of differentiation. You can see that happen over and over and over again, or not.
Yes. Okay. What would practically, when you say death, because you and I know what we're saying, someone's listening, they're going, well, what does she mean by death in order to individuate and differentiate? What would an example of a death be?
Yeah.
Something
so
dying.
The first chapter of my book is actually called From Maiden to Mother. And the entire chapter is around the concept of ego death and through the lens of motherhood. But we could talk about ego death. We all go through, hopefully, many of them in our lifetime. And what does that mean? That means the death of who I was and the rebirth into who I will be and who I'm becoming. In between that is a liminal space. It's the darkness. So we have death, darkness, rebirth. You don't get to have rebirth without liminality. You don't get to have rebirth without darkness, which is where the struggle is. I am not who I was.
That.
I know. And we fight against it. I'm not who I was, but I don't yet know who I will be. And so I either cling to the past or I dissociate, I fill my life with distractions, I pretend it's not happening, and I try to skip forward into the becoming without the death and integration part, right? So it's ego death is what we're talking about. It's version of self. And so in the book, right, I talk about the maiden to the mother. One of my biggest kind of inspirations has always been Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And she wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves. And she has this term that she calls child mothers. And she talks about how many of us, and especially our mothers and grandmothers, are child mothers. Biologically, they are mothers, but emotionally and spiritually, they are not. And then the impact that that has on us because they, for all of their reasons, not to shame them, did not go through this death and rebirth process that we're talking about.
Yeah, I love this idea of child mothers and putting it in those words because we can see that they obviously did the best they could. People struggle with that. And emotionally, they were stuck. They were stuck along the continuum somewhere.
Yep.
And so let's take this example that I brought up about sex and people feel like I have to have sex and I don't really want to have the sex with my partner. Yep. And the idea would be death of saying, it's okay. You're basically breaking up with this whole conditioning paradigm. So that's a form of death.
Yes. And I'll tell you, look, I'm not perfect at this. I wrote this book and my own experience of it. My partner and I literally just had this similar conversation this morning. I'm not even exaggerating.
See?
We're 8 years in. We've done the work. He's a therapist too, for God's sakes. I've written a whole freaking book on this topic and we're still talking about it. And
it's real. It's real.
It's real. And that's why I say there's no shame. We're all in this together. We're all swimming in the same soup. But here's what I will say. He will jokingly sometimes say, sometimes I miss Vanessa 1.0 because it was pre doing all of this work and saying like, this is who I am. I will not self-abandon. Let's just use the sex example. I will not have sex in order to not rock the boat, maintain the peace, make sure you're satisfied, make sure things are okay in the relationship. I will not do that anymore. I will only do it when it feels true and honest for me, and I will let the chips fall where they may. You're your own person. I don't need to control and regulate you. If that doesn't work for you, then our relationship will change form. Not saying there's not going to be pain and suffering along the way, but I'm okay. Like I'm good. I'm not going to die. I've got myself. I can be with myself through that struggle. Right. And so sex is like one huge portion in relationships where I see this play out all the time, to your point.
As marriage therapists, we see this
all the time.
All the time. It's a huge issue. And I think it does go back to individuation and differentiation.
I agree. I agree.
Feeling secure within yourself to be able to say, like you just said, I'm okay. Let the chips, you said, I'd let the chips fall where they may. That is so scary to so many people.
It is.
It's
but again,
to them.
You're functioning under this choose me wound that tells especially women, if you're not partnered, you are nothing, right?
Ooh, that's
no
good.
worth
If you're
and
not
value.
Partnered, you're nothing. And that is for men sometimes too. I mean,
sometimes too, right?
But women in particular. If
right.
you're not chosen, there's something wrong with me. I'm unlovable.
That's right. That's right. And so I have to prove again my worth and value by keeping this relationship intact. And part of that strategy is the sex strategy.
And I want to be that partner that's easy, goes with the flow, satisfies my partner. I hear that a lot. I don't want to be that one where they're going to talk to their guy friends or their friends and tell them, oh, we're not doing that. You have to be secure with who you are. And this is the journey of this is the book you wrote, is how do we become more secure with who we are?
That's right. And how do we stand in that knowing? And again, let go of the control. And the control is coming from the fear, but a lot of the fear is mitigated through this deeper work. First of all, it's done in the fire of like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to let my partner have their experience. And then I'm going to make it to the other side and know that I'm still here and I'm still okay. But how do I create a life in which it's not about being selfish, which is another trope that we're all taught to keep us in line.
Oh, yeah.
It's not about being selfish. It's about saying, I can love you, whether we're talking the partner, whether we're talking the kids, whether we're talking family or friendships. I can love you better from a sovereign whole place than from a place that's actually, I'm loving you because I need you to make me feel better. I need you to make me feel chosen. I need you to make me feel less anxious. That's not love. That's codependency.
And it's a parent-child relationship then.
That's right.
because you're looking for someone else to soothe you, which is what a parent we were meant to have in
That's right.
childhood, is to be soothed. And then we learn how to do that on our own. That's the ultimate goal. But now then we're looking for that replacement of who's going to soothe me. How am I going to
Mm.
feel needed and worthy and matter and secure? Oh, this other person is going to do that for me, which is really a replacement of a parent.
Which is why I'm sure you probably feel this working with couples. So many couples don't have a great sex life. I would argue that a lot of that is because there's so many parental dynamics in our romantic partnerships that the eros is mostly gone.
100%. I want to just like do a boom, drop the mic, because I feel like what I see is so many parent-child relationships
So many.
or
And this is not gendered
child-child. No, this
or
is not
child-child.
gendered at all. It's parent-child or child-child. And what we're working on is getting everyone to function like secure adults.
That's right. And here's what, too, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. The more I've done this work, the more I've also look, I love attachment theory. I think it's done wonders for us. I utilize it too in my own practice, in my own life. I also think that we've swung the pendulum a little too far. I think we've become so attachment obsessed that what we have done through this lens of attachment, and also by the way we kind of pop psychology this stuff, is we have actually looked to these partners to say, okay, it's your job to help me become more secure, which again is really just taking what we should have, air quotes, gotten from our parent and put it in the hands of our partner. When in actuality, it's nobody's job to help us find to be secure. It's actually our job. And that comes through reparenting ourselves, not by putting that in somebody else's hands. And I think that's actually the pendulum swing that I find that I'm untangling with so many of my clients, which is like, stop coming to me and being like, I'm an avoidant and they're an anxious. No, you're not. It's a spectrum. It's not that cut and dry. And stop making this person responsible for you feeling okay in your skin because you're just making them your parent.
Yes, because they'll be like, I'm anxious because they da 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 da. I'm avoidant because they fill in the blank, right?
That's right.
Rather than I am looking within to figure out my own patterns.
Mhm.
I'm learning how to feel more secure with myself rather
That's
than
right.
depending on you to do it for me. It is such a breakthrough, I think revolutionary at this point in time where we are right now, necessary conversation.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more. And this is where I see a lot of those of us who are having these kind of conversations, I get a lot of pushback, obviously, from people. And I get it. This is actually a pretty radical way of looking at relating to one another because it's not what we've been taught for thousands of years, actually. It really does break outside again of these dominator paradigms and says no, we need to all be kind of acting and functioning as our own autonomous beings and relating to one another from that place. It's really like poking the bubble, if you will, or popping the bubble on the collective shadow. And so people are very activated by it. And again, I'm still struggling with it. That's the hard part about being what we say, a way shower. You don't have anybody in front of you to see how they've done it before. You're kind of doing it for the first time. So it can feel a little lonely and scary out there.
Yeah, it's just like when people come to therapy, they're starting to delayer, deconstruct, and really become more of who they are. It can feel more lonely at the beginning. I'm like,
Totally.
I hear you. I validate that because you're breaking up with the myths. This is what your book is about. You're breaking up with these myths that we've bought into. The movies have portrayed it, romance novels. And my teen is like, those romance novels have done a number on me because everybody's looking for that perfect someone to come in. And so you're breaking up really with this fairy tale that we've been in our heads, going to feel like someone's going to rescue us. And then we'll feel better.
Well, and I love that because, again, part of me wanting to use myth and fairy tale in the book, I mean, obviously my background's in depth, so I love a good myth and fairy tale, but it was also to go back to some of these fairy tales that I found were used to control us and go, where did this start? Because I don't actually believe that this is really what it was meant to teach us. And sure enough, there's the Disneyfication of all of these stories that we know. None of those are the original myth. They're massive compilations. A lot of the teaching element has been stripped away for the sake of entertainment. And so even Cinderella as an example, at first glance, we would think Cinderella is somebody who gets saved by a prince. And I would argue absolutely not. That's not what the original myth of Cinderella is actually meant to teach us. It's actually about agency of self. It's actually about being self-contained. It's actually about merging the healthy feminine with the healthy masculine. It's actually about, in the face of the biggest struggle and the very natural abandonment of parental figures, which all of us experience going into adulthood. What do you do about that? How do you become your adult self? But that's the original myth. And you have to understand how to read myth and how to take the maps away from the myth. And that's not what we've been given in Disney.
It is not. How do you feel like you've been secure in looking at these from an expanded place, not a fear-based place? Like you're deconstructing fairy tales, you're looking at things with a different lens. I feel like if you've had a lot of trauma, that can be scary for folks because there's not like this certainty. There is no certainty. We know this, but
there you go.
we cling to that, right?
Yeah.
People cling to that. How do you feel like you've gotten to the place where you want that? You want this expanded place of uncertainty.
That's a big question. I mean, lifetime of work and it will never be done. I mean, I think all of us naturally struggle with uncertainty and fear and the unknown. I always jokingly say that it's like the kind of twisted joke of the universe is that like the thing that we all struggle with, change and uncertainty, is like the main through line of the universe. But a lot of it has been through the fire. It's been through being with myself through massive changes, massive ego deaths, huge life shifts, like the fire, right? As an example. I mean, that's not
fire.
relational.
Like, is that the metaphorical or was that also
both?
Yeah.
Literal and figurative, metaphorical and tangible. And so it really is through being with yourself through those moments, getting to the other side and saying, I'm still here. It's noticing patterns. It's pattern recognition in the way that I reach for something or someone to give me that release valve from anxiety. Because even if just for a moment, I get a little hit of safety, I get a little hit of I'm okay, I'm loved, I belong, right? And noticing, like any recovery from any addiction, how I continue to reach for that, how I need more and more and more of it once I get a little hit. And so some of it is actually doing the active recovery work, which is hard and is tangible and is roll your sleeves up in the moment and is through fellowship, group fellowship, like coming together in community. Like I lead codependency recovery groups. I have for 6 years. So it's that. It's like there's no easy magic wand here. We have to do this work in relationship to ourselves and to relating to other people out there in the world. My partner and I have had quite a few cycles of like, I think this might be it. I think this might be where our paths kind of fork. And I've had to be okay with myself in that because what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go backwards and say, okay, in order to keep this together, I'm going to make it about him. Again, the sex stuff, whatever that like the false version of me that, by the way, learned that growing up and learned it through a lot of experience. I know how to keep somebody happy at the expense of myself.
Oh, yeah. We got that down.
We all do. But it's unlearning that. And again, I mean, I know this is kind of like a fluffy answer to this question, but it's putting in the reps. It's doing the work day to day to day in relationship.
And a willingness to be in that discomfort. I feel like it's a willingness to sit in that, okay, I don't know how this is going to turn out and I'm okay.
Thank you for saying that too, because I think that's really important. And this is a lot of the codependency work that I do with people who come into my group and they're either in, whether it's their family relationships or their romantic or children, where they're like, if only they would do this, like, can I send them this book? Can I get them in group? And I'm,
yes,
all of them, right? And I'm like, stop it. Let them be on their own path. Let them be on their own journey. It's the same thing with our children. I don't own you. You don't belong to me. I need to give you the respect of your autonomy. This is Al-Anon work 101. I could have a partner who's on the street right now. And if that's what they choose, I have to give them that respect. I can't make it about me wanting to rescue and save them. I have to say, you have free choice. You have agency. I'll be here. I can be a support system for you if and when you decide that you want that. But I can't throw away my life in order to kind of micromanage yours, because that's not respecting that person's soul. It's not respecting the journey, the lesson that they're here to learn.
You're probably speaking to some people who go, whoa, they're on the street and you're going to just let them be on the street.
I get it all the time.
You know this is going to be. And the guilt people feel like, I'm not helping them. I'm not doing everything I can to help somebody else. How does that keep us into that cycle? Like, I need to be doing more. I need to be a better mom, friend, spouse. I mean, fill in the blank.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is the part when I'm teaching this part in my codependency groups, this is the part where I usually go, okay, guys, trigger warning. This is going to piss you off.
I
Right.
love that because it's
But
true.
it
You're
is
going to
so
feel
true.
it, and there's something in there for you if it does. And that's
And
okay.
there's going to be defense, and that's okay. Try to question the defense and get curious. But this is the part where a lot of times I'll say the big uncomfortable truth around the overgiving and the overfunctioning and the people pleasing and the rescuing and all these very codependent traits is that I'm not saying that you're not a loving and kind person, but those specific things that we're talking about are actually not about the other person. They're about you. And ouch, that is a really hard pill to swallow because again, people get like, what do you mean?
Exactly. I was going
love
to say,
this
people go, what do you
person."
mean? I'm just loving them.
That's right. But at the end of the day, if you're loving them against their will, if you're doing things for them that they should be in theory doing for themselves,
And
if
they don't
you're
want you to be
overfunctioning,
doing.
that's right, then it's not actually about them. It is about you needing to feel enough, worthy, needed, valuable, like I have purpose in this world. Someone else can't be your purpose.
And I'm
They
not
didn't
a
ask for
bad
that.
mom. I'm not a bad friend. I'm not a bad fill in the blank.
That's right. And listen, I'm sure I'm not the only one when I say I grew up with the parent who basically said to me without saying it to me, if it weren't for me, they would what? Be happy, be free, have more money, like have this life that they imagine for themselves. And I'll tell you, growing up with that knowing, it's one of those where you're like, I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask you to make me your purpose or your reason for existing or not existing, for being happy or not being happy. I didn't ask for that. You brought me into this world. And it's a really shitty way to grow up, actually. And it really does have a long lasting impact on your relationship with that parent when you start doing this work and you start going, that's unfair. I'm going to give that back to you because that's not my responsibility. And it's really messed up, actually, that you put that on me to begin with.
Because you want me to heal your wound.
That's right.
And
That's
that's
right.
what happens. And this is what the relational wounding, I feel like we want other people to heal our wounds. So we put it on our kids, we put it on our partners, we put it on our friendships. It's just such a big wound. And if we don't heal it, you'll continue to put it on other people.
Yeah. And look,
including
healing
yourself.
it, what does that mean, right? I mean, I always say it's
Yes.
like, it's a lifelong journey and we're all on the same train together. We're all going the same stop. No one gets to get off this ride. We are all on this ride together. That's another when going back to what you were asking me about, like, how do I keep showing up and doing it? There's like a reframing that I've had to do around this work of like, okay, this is exciting. It's a life school. We're all here to mess up and learn and grow and evolve. And you're right. Some people don't want that. Some people are not interested in that. They want to push against that. Fine. That's great for them. That's not what I want in my life. And so I reprioritize my relationships. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean they're less than me. It means that for whatever reason on this go around, that's not where their soul is at. Okay, fine. But for me, I have to keep coming back to my excitement around the evolution, my excitement around like, ooh, I'm activated. Fascinating. What is that about? Maybe it's because I'm a therapist, but
I'm like, no, this is how I am.
it's juicy.
You can't take it away from us. It's just part of how I am in this world.
Yeah. Same.
It gives me life.
Mhm.
Honestly, even if it's painful, it gives me life.
That's part of life, right?
It
pain.
is. It is. So, okay, one of my favorite questions, because I love books. Therapists and listeners love books.
Love books.
What have been, let's say, your top 2 books that have made the biggest difference in your life? And it could be anything. And I know this is like asking for your favorite child.
Oh God,
So,
I'm like, I don't know.
whatever comes to your mind. It could be, and don't be constrained. And this is just for this moment. Another moment, you'd be like, well, this is the book I like.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the first ones that are coming up. So one of them would be The Alchemist. That was probably one of the big ones for me. I'm trying to think of what the second, I mean, God, there's so many amazing teachers that have had such an impact on my life. I guess in this moment, I'm going to have to say Women Who Run with the Wolves. But that's one of those books, I suppose, like any book that's more kind of spiritually minded, it's a different book every time I read it. I read that book when I was in like my late 20s, and it was a wildly different book than reading it as like a new mother in my like mid to late 30s. I teach workshops a lot of times, like pulling from that book. And so now when I go back, even there's parts that I read and I'm like, oh, this is not what I read. a year ago. And there's something about books that do that, I guess, like burrow into my soul a little bit more because there's not one note. It's like you got to keep coming back to it. I'll tell you, that was actually one of the saddest things about losing my house in the fire. That copy of that book that I've had for so long and was earmarked and underlined and notes in the margin. And a friend of mine gifted me a new one after the fire, knowing that I love that book so much. And I was so grateful. And also it made me so sad to be like, it's blank. I have to redo it all over again. But yeah, that book for sure is up there.
That's hard. It's like your companion to your book. You've like underlined, highlighted, made notes in the margin. Totally. Oh, yeah. I feel you on that one. Is there anything we did not cover that you feel like is important to the mission you're on or this work you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, look, one of the things I say about this book often is that this book is, yes, it's through the lens of motherhood, but it's not just for women to read or the birthing partner to read. My partner, my husband read it, and I've actually gotten quite a few messages from men who have reached out to me and said, have to tell you, I read your book and it blew my mind. Like, thank you so much. It's been so helpful. And so I just want people out there to hear that this book is really about myths. It's about relational myths. It's about these constructs that keep us all stuck. And even if you're not a mother, you have a mother and your mother had a mother, and mothers make up a pretty large population of this world. And they are a population that we seek to control and keep minimized for a reason. So for me, I guess being like the information nerd that I am, the like sociological, anthropological aspect of this book was just as important because I need to know how we got here so that I can depersonalize what's going on for me. And I can say, oh, wait, I live within these systems and this is why. And so it becomes almost a form of activism to do this personal work on myself. And so I guess it's a couple things in one, but it's really to say, even if you're like, oh, I'm not a mom, I don't need to listen to this. This is really for everybody.
I agree. I think everybody needs to get the book. We're going to link it in the show notes, also in our newsletter. Where can people find Vanessa Bennett? If they're like, I loved her and she spoke to my soul, where can they find you?
Yeah, everything's on my website. So vanessabennett.com. I'm mostly on Instagram, Vanessa S. Bennett, but I have a love-hate relationship with social media, as most of us do these days. And I'm really struggling on how to show up there as myself anymore. The cesspool that social has become.
It makes you, it's like, I hear you. And then you're trying to promote the book and you have to do the social media or else people don't find out about it. It's a whole thing.
It's hard. So I have a Substack where I spend a lot more time like musing and doing deeper reflections and writing. So you can find me at Substack, on my Substack, which is on my website. I also have a coaching academy, a depth psychology coaching academy, because I feel really called to bring soul work to the masses. So that's another, what else? What else am I spinning? I have a private community. I've got all the things.
You got a lot going. You got a lot of
functioner that
options. You got a lot of options, lots of resources. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I loved our conversation. I could have talked to you for a long time.
I looked at the clock. I was like, oh my God.
I was like, I know. I was like, time's up. Oh no. So thank you so much. Everyone go grab the book. You also have another book, which I shared in the intro. So also grab that one. We're so grateful.
It's not me, it's you. Yeah. With my husband. And
there you go. Because how many times people come to therapy and go, it's not me, it's them. And they're pointing at the person next to them. Get the books and keep going. Keep doing the work you're doing. So grateful for you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, DBoice, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.